Yeah, I must be honest, that's probably one of the most embarrassing press conferences I've done in a while. And not because we were awful, but they were really good. And I don't want to put the old cliche out there, credit to them. They were good, but we made them better with our performance. To be 20-0 up, we did the same against Italy. 27-3 up, and then we let teams back in. We can find excuses there, but at the end of the day, they gutsed it out. They had a few injuries when Skelton and Peach went off, and we had one or two injuries, but yes, we gave them one or two soft tries with an intercept here, and we were almost scoring, and then they scored from a pass from Andre. So, but overall, they were just better than us on the day in most departments. We didn't scrum them. They beat us in the lineouts. We, for the first 25 minutes, I thought we were really good at the breakdown. But after that, when Sia got injured and Marco had to go for HIA, they bullied us at the breakdown. Yeah, so I can just sit there and say, listen, they beat us in most departments. And yeah, we as coaches got it terribly wrong.
It's that time of the year again when News 24 brings you Inside Pass, the podcast that goes against the grain, a bit like a Wallabies victory at Ellis Park. I'm Simnikiwe, Xabanisa, and today I'm joined live by senior sports writer Khanyiso Tshwaku and the boss man himself, Lloyd Burnard, who joins us telephonically from our Cape Town office. After the debacle of Ellis Park, where the Boks' perfect storm in the first 20 minutes spectacularly blew itself out, ending up with the Aussies winning their first match at the venue in 62 years. The two sides are up against each other again in the second round of the Rugby Championship, this time in Cape Town on Saturday. Trucks, good morning and welcome.
Morning, Sim, and morning to Lloyd when he comes in.
Yeah, no, better late than never, Cape Town time. But we can just get on with it for now. Trucks, I'll start at the very end instead of the beginning. And that end is news out of the Bok camp. The most recent news out of the Bok camp is that Willie Leroux, who was supposed to start his 101st game.
Yeah.
Sort of almost a surprise return, maybe thanks to the events of last week where game management was maybe a problem, is now being replaced by Aphelele Fasi, who Rassie had clearly said he felt he was lacking in a bit of confidence. What do you make of that move? Do you think that was, in sort of Rassie, how do I put it?
Racism.
Yeah, in Rassism, is it one of those situations where this was always on the cards, or do you think this time around it's genuine? There's no sort of game at play behind the scenes.
Look, if you look at a player like Willie and his advanced age, he is a bit more prone to having niggles that may last a bit through the week. He is 36 after all. Yeah, he is not young. So look. At the end of the day, Aphelele, to say that he lacked confidence, I do think it was a bit off the mark. He actually had a good game. I think the confidence part then would be probably down to the decision making. But if you look at how the Boks made so many line breaks that weren't converted into tries, clearly he wasn't the only one who was guilty of that. I think then maybe it was the overplaying that Tony Brown talked about, where Russ explained in the press conference where, to use your term, there wasn't a lot of heads-up rugby. And if there's something that Aphelele can do very well, I think not as well as Vili, though, is to play heads-up rugby, play what's in front of them. But also, I think it's a distinct opportunity to see what Andre Pollard can do when there's a different fullback. We saw in the World Cup where Damian Willemse probably maneered himself where he popped up at 10, was able to manage play, but not in the manner that Willie does. There is a bit of instinct, there's a bit of physicality that comes with a Damian Willemse, but probably he was the one who lacked the confidence the most. I think he actually was a fair yard off the pace was Damian Willemse. But I think Aphelele Fasi, look, he may not have Willie's playmaking gifts in a bubble wrap at the moment, but probably as when you look at the South African fullbacks, probably he's the one who's closest to that. I mean, if you'll know him from having watched him at Dale through the Sharks, even the Craven week, he'd often pop up at 10 and 12 where he'd actually pull playmaking strings. But has he been employed by the Sharks in that way? Not quite yet, but let's see how he'll turn up at Cape Town Stadium tomorrow.
One of the big talking points about Cape Town is that it'll be wet tomorrow, which obviously, when you to borrow from you, Vili's not so young. I can only imagine what you say about me behind my back, but that's a story for another day. Vili's not young at 36. A wet game kind of like wouldn't have made a difference because you don't really need an awful lot of foot speed. But a guy like Aphelele, if he now comes into a wet game, what are your thoughts in terms of how that affects the way maybe the Boks? I want you to tell me the difference in how the Boks might play if, from having a Vili to ending up with Aphelele.
I hark back to the Perth test of last year that the Boks won quite comfortably. And Aphelele Fassi won the kicking game hands down because whenever the ball was put in the air, he was the man there. He was winning those high balls and he troubled the Australians significantly. Yes, he did score, but in those conditions, he managed the high ball when it came to him very well. And when he was the chaser, he was also magnificent in that regard. And look, I think also now, if you look at the makeup of the Bok back three, there's a tall Kanan Moody at right wing. There's Cheslin Colby, who may be short, but is able to jump, to hoop jump, if I can put it that way. Then there's a Pele Fasu. South Africa are very clear that the first thing they need to win the kicking contest, because that's the second part where the game for the Boks last week fell to pieces. They initially lost the breakdown after Marco van Staden came off when Sia, after that knee knock, wasn't quite the same. And secondly, they lost the kicking battle. So it's very clear that the Boks need to rescue those two facets first and dominate them for a sustained amount of time, not just a 20-minute storm that hits Winshire. So it's clear that Fassi is not quite even there for the tactical kicking, but making sure that the Boks have the aerial game covered.
Let's go back to Ellis Park. I think we've all written at length about what went wrong because that's what journalists do best. It's somebody else's mistakes. They will point them out. I think the three things that came out from there was, the first one was obviously the line-out was a shambles, the breakdown was a shambles, and then game management was another problem. Yeah. So when you add those three things, I'll start with the line-out. Do you feel the team that's been chosen this week, obviously, last week we had Ebenezebeth, Lloyd and Peter Steph du Toit as the line-out options for that game. And all three of them are not in the starting lineup with Erges Neyman, Ruan Nokia, and obviously Franco Mostert replacing Peter Steph du Toit at blindside as the other lineout option. And of course, this week they also have Jean-Luc Dupré, who has played lock for Sale Sharks before. Yeah. So do you feel the selection of the Boks addresses, the line-out issue, or was it just an aberration given how experienced the two locks were, that were there before?
It was an aberration, but also remember that it's a two-part thing where it's not just a jumping issue from the jumpers and the timing issue. You've also got a throwing issue that did not quite disappear last year, especially the timings between the throwers and the jumpers. I think when you look at this particular test match, there's 4 line-out options. You've got a key disruptor in Erges Neyman, and Erges Neyman he contests pretty much every line-out, whether he's front, middle, or back, he is contesting. And also now, that means Australia now will have to be very variable with how they deal with the line-outs, because what the Boks have done with 4 line-out options, they're making sure that front ball, Australia can't be moving around. Middle ball, Australia will have to be very smart. Back ball, they've got 2 options in Franco, and you find that Franco is actually a better front ball banker. But if you've now got him as a back ball option with Jean-Luc Dupré, South Africa is very clear that we will make sure that we win our ball, but make sure that Australia have no clean ball, because remember that the 3 facets you mentioned, they actually fed into each other. Once the line out fell to bits, it then started to stagnate the attack. And what that also allowed Australia to actually scrap at the breakdown, and it robs South Africa of critical breakdown momentum, because once you get clean line out ball, you've got clean breakdown ball, you've got clean attacking ball. So Australia knew if they disrupted the line out, they were able to just fan out that much more in defense, and that was very clear in how they scored their turnover tries.
Right. Listen, I'll just kick the problem down the road a little bit. As far as Cape Town down the road, usually the people sitting in the aircon office are the bosses in Cape Town. But because the rugby's in Cape Town this week, actually the boss has been, the boots on the ground. So we need to kind of like get close to the action, as it were, with our boss, Lloyd Burnard. I always make the mistake of calling him Lord Burnard. Maybe not the right thing to do when the KPAs are around the corner. But Lloyd, welcome. First things first, I've already asked Trucks about one of the big problems from last week, which was obviously the line out. I'll ask you to jump into the breakdown as in terms of whether the selections of the Boks have addressed it. Last week they went with Marco van Staden and Siyakolisi at 8, which is unusual, but 2 open sides in the loose trio, and then obviously Peter Steph Tutoy, he needs no introduction. But this week they're going with Marco and Jean-Luc Dupré, who's playing his first start in like 7 years or whatever it is, hasn't been shown that he's a trusted player in the system. And then you've got Franco Mostert, who, yes, can play blindside flank, but he's probably about 34 now, 33, 34, which makes him not such a young fella, which raises questions of whether he's got that sort of work rate that Peter Steph has. Do you feel that the selection that's gone, that Rassie and them have taken this week has what it takes to sort of stabilize that breakdown?
Morning, chaps. Thanks for the intro, and you are doing a sterling job here, Sim. You might have a future in podcasting, but it's not great.
I just do this because I get told.
Listen, the breakdown was obviously a massive talking point after Ellis Park and Rassie. It didn't take him long to acknowledge that the Boks got absolutely smashed in that department. Sia obviously off with the injury, didn't help matters. But Joe Schmidt yesterday at his press conference at the Vineyard Hotel in Newlands made some good points. The game has changed so much where you no longer look at the guy with the number 6 on his back to be your chief poacher.
Yeah.
There's so many other players, and he pointed to some of the Boks that they have. I mean, Malcolm Marx, for years now has been considered one of the best poachers in the game. He starts this weekend. Marco van Staden was effective in that department at Ellis Park, one of very few who was, and he starts again. Even someone like Jesse Creel over the ball in the number 13 jersey, and Damien Dialendi. These are strong guys who technically get it right, and if you've got guys standing off that breakdown and your tackler's getting to his feet and having a dip at the ball, there's Springboks throughout that starting 15 who can kind of do that. So I think it's certainly an area they're going to have to focus on a lot. It's certainly an area they're going to have to be better in. But in terms of personnel, I think we've just moved to a place where the number on your back isn't the most important thing. Yes, naturally, Franco Mostert, Jean-Luc Dupré, you wouldn't consider them natural fetches, and that's where the kind of concern comes in, because those are the other loosies. But hopefully for Rassie and the team, there's enough guys around the park who can contest.
Right, I'm going to split the game management sort of question between the two of you. I'll start with Trucks here. Trucks, when you see Andre Pollard, Mr. 1-point victories in the quarterfinal, semi-final, and the World Cup final in 2023, is that for you reaction enough for what took place at Ellis Park, and what is it that you think is different that he's going to bring?
No, it was. I think what the Boks missed in particular, even though Andre stays and tried to sort of manage the game, but then again, by the time he tried to manage the game, the Wallaby had already bolted by then, already jumped off by then. The key thing was that the Boks needed to just dial back a bit and play what's in front of them, play the percentages, kick Australia into the corners, tire them out.
Yeah.
It's very clear now they're going to go back to that particular standard where they're going to try tire out the Wallabies. Pollard's job is very simple. Put us in the right areas, because we know that he neither possesses the running game nor the passing running game to make a backline work, which is where Damien Dialene is going to be very important from a game management perspective, because he's got the passes either way. He's got the game vision and the game management to ensure that if, let's say, Apelele is not quite there to stimulate the game plan, the game play 10, he's there to move. And you'd find, I won't be surprised if at some point Damien actually shows up at first receiver with Pollard taking it up, and then him being the one who's moving the ball wide in the absence of Apelele if he's caught at the back or his strike running out wide on the trams.
Lloyd, let me come to you about Mani Libok He took an awful lot of flack for how the game sort of fizzled out, if you want to call it that. But some of us remember that first 20 minutes. That first 20 minutes was sensational, and Miney was so much of what was good about it. The way he played was so much about what was good about it. You work in Cape Town, you watch this guy, obviously most weekends done most. And, coming into the setup this year, Miney's problem was supposed to be goal kicking. That seems to have been sorted out. Now we're sitting and looking at the poor blighter and we're going, you know what? Or maybe he doesn't quite know how to manage a game. I've just had a look at his caps for the Boks. He's on 20. Do you sit and think? The thing I've noticed about Miney is that he's aggressive as a player, i.e. he plays aggressively, and if things go badly, he still wants to play aggressively. Do you think he's the kind of guy that will ever rein himself in terms of, just from a temperament perspective, as someone who's obviously watched him a lot in Cape Town?
It's super interesting, and I don't know if you ever want to do that to Mani. I think he's at his best when he is pushing it, as far as he can, and the margins are so fine. If you take that intercept pass that he threw on the weekend, I mean, Rassie even spoke about it in one of his 3 press conferences in 4 days. He mentioned, the fact that Mani, that's very close to kind of, putting the Boks away. He's thrown that one over the top. It's very well read by the defender, who makes the intercept and scores. But the margin there is very fine. And if he gets that pass away, then the Boks are arguably in for another try. I think it's, Mani was never going to play this weekend. I don't think he's been left out because he had a howler in Joburg or anything like that, or couldn't manage a game. I think the plan was always for him to play in Joburg and then to go back to Pollard or Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu for Cape Town. And I also think that he's far from out of the Springbok picture. He's still got the backing of Rassie, absolutely, and the coaches and the players because of their playmaking. And if you look at the direction that the Boks are trying to go in presently, they're not going to just abandon that endeavor to run the ball because it didn't go well at Ellis Park. We have that first 20 minutes as a blueprint of what it can be when it works. And Mani's going to have a huge role to play in that space between now and 2027, I'm certain. He's one of those guys who polarizes opinion the way he does because of how close to the edge he lives. And it often borders on, looking suicidal, but then when it works, it looks genius. And he kind of is on that line the whole time, which is why people notice him a lot more. But I think if you're looking at the fly half department, I mean, I don't see too many changes. I mean, those are the 3 for me. Pollard for situations like this, Mani Libbok for the sheer playmaking ability and kind of guiding the Boks where they were in the direction that they want to go, and then you've got Sasha, who's maybe a hybrid between the 2 when he gets it all kind of going, but obviously still needs a lot of test rugby ahead of him. But I mean, those for me are surely the 3 front runners to go to the World Cup, even though we're still 2 years away.
Speaking of the boy genius, Lloyd, he's on the bench as part of a 6-2 split. We all know that he loves playing fly half. That's his stated ambition. He wants to play 10, but obviously he can play 12. He can play 15 as well. But the thing, if it's one of those things, if you're getting rid of Miney because he didn't manage things too well, sometimes with Sasha it can feel almost worse because Sasha strikes me. It's almost like watching cricket. You've got a batsman with too many shots, with more than one shot for the same ball, and every now and again he tries to play all of them at the same time, and he gets himself out. Sasha's still at that stage of his development. In a game this crucial, is it for you? I mean, is it for you obviously being devil's advocate here? Is it for you the right move to go with him rather than maybe going with Miney to sort of get back on the horse?
I think so. I think it's also important to, as much as the Springboks need to win this weekend, and they do, I mean, back-to-back losses at home would be devastating against the Wallabies. But, I think it's games like this that will be good for a player like Sasha. to come on with that responsibility. I think we saw it in Ireland, it was at Durban, Chucks, you'll know, last year where he had to come on and play like 77 minutes at fullback after an injury, and that was, obviously at the very beginning of his career. I think it's good for a player like Sasha to be in a situation where he might have to cover 12, he might have to cover 15, he might have to cover 10. That guy knows more than anyone that the Sasha flair and X factor isn't going to be enough for him to nail down a place at the Boks. He's been told as much by Rassie. Rassie's quote was 80%, 20% Sasha, 80% kind of, the rest of it, encouraging him to be, that Bok fly half that does the basics well, puts his team in the right places of the field, but still has that little window to express himself. So obviously when you're playing with number 23 on your back, it means you could do one of, numerous roles. He could come on through an injury and have to do a serious shift. He might come on with the Boks 20 points up and he gets to have a bit of freedom. He might come on with it incredibly tight and then he has to, play a very intelligent, tactical kicking game from the back. So I think just the fact that a player like that at this stage of his career is being put in situations like this makes it the right call. And I suppose that versatility of Sasha's, ironically, his biggest hurdle at the moment is probably his versatility, in that he is that kind of option, that Damien Phillips option where he can cover numerous positions on the bench and allow Rassie to go with 6'2", and that might ultimately down the line end up hurting his starting chances. But no, looking forward to seeing how he goes. He's a guy who just commands attention, and I know that Cape Town will be keen to see how he goes as well.
Certainly gets it as well. 6-2 split. Lloyd described it. Chucks, I'm going to ask you about this. Lloyd described it as sort of the Boks going old school. I think I said, no BS, just bomb squad. The notable thing about that 6-2 split is the name that's been omitted at replacement hooker, which is Bongi Mbonambi. We need to have this chat. Are we unfortunately witnessing the end of a road here?
Look, it's heading in that direction, and it's not an isolated event. I mean, if you've looked at how he's been performing for the Sharks in particular, he hasn't quite showed up. It feels like when watching Bongi, it's him just ticking off his shift, putting in his clock card, in and out. And the bigger challenge...
I hope you don't meet him after this, but anyway, carry on.
The bigger challenge here is that, is he being challenged at the Sharks? Because, I mean, if you look at the young hookers that have Fez and Bata, Dylan Rod-Richardson will rotate between hooker and flank. I'm not sure if he's being challenged enough. If you look at the Stormers, for example, yes, they don't have a standout hooker. I saw they announced their URC squad. Yeah. I saw the name of JJ Kotze and I was very, very, very happy because I realized now that one Andre Higofente will probably now have to properly shape up because JJ is the better of the two. Yeah. Then there's also Skara there hanging in the background now that Joseph Dweba's gone. But look, I mean, I think with Bongi in particular, I don't think he's pulled his weight at the Sharks. And I think now they're starting to show with the Boks. I mean, when you expect a player of that caliber and that experience to make a difference when he comes on, but if you look at the times when he's come on, actually the Bok line out, which was already going to pieces, was actually getting worse. Got worse under his watch, which is for a player of visibility is unacceptable. Hopefully, there will be time for reflection for him. Also, number 2, better conditioning. He needs to be better conditions because I mean, speaking to one of my friends or coaching, is one of the biggest things that has gone from Bongi Mbonambi because of his what is becoming clear lack of conditioning is ball carrying back, because that's one thing that he has, the ability to get over the advantage line. That is diminishing from his game, and that is a result of his diminishing conditioning. So there should be a period where he just sits down, looks after that, and give himself another probably 18 months to 2 years. But as a 2027 call, he's becoming a bit difficult.
Yeah. Geez, guys, we're running out of time. We literally have just 4 minutes left of this podcast. It's flown by. Lloyd, obviously, as the man, whose boots on the ground, I don't know if this is a nice question to ask of a man who works at News 24 Sport, but how's the ticket sales going there?
I'm not entirely sure. We've been trying to get an exact number, but there are still tickets available. I was actually sitting with a colleague of mine at the Joe Schmidt press conference yesterday, and he was looking on his phone because I think he was working on a similar kind of story. And there were still, quite a lot available, certainly through the app. Ticketmaster or whichever one it is. But geez, they're expensive. I mean, those the cheapest ones we could find in that section were about 2,300 rand or something like that. But no, I think you'll have a good crowd. I mean, Khanyiso himself has been covering this ticket story very closely for a while now, and it's an important one, because going forward, it is something that SA Rugby is going to have to consider as you go into, this is the last one for. The second last one for this year. But I mean, as you go into next season, you can't have stadiums where the Boks are playing and they're not full. I mean, ideally, you want to get as many people there as you can. So if it means they're going to have to rethink the prices, then I think that's something they have to do. But yeah, I'm sure we'll see a very festive, close to full crowd at Cape Town Stadium tomorrow. The weather, I can tell you all week I've been waiting for the rain, and it's haven't seen too much of it yet, and it's quite sunny as we speak now, so I probably just jinxed it and it's about to start coming down. But no, touch wood, it'll be a bit of drizzle in the morning tomorrow, and then it'll clear up a bit and we can have a nice running game. It's going to be fun, man. We're looking forward to it.
I think you can expect a call from a certain higher up at SA Rugby after that utterance, but that's a story for another day. Guys, we almost done. We literally have 1 minute left, which means each of you has 30 seconds. It's a very important game for the Springboks. They haven't won. They haven't got any points so far. They're defending this thing. So obviously tomorrow is desperation stakes. They have to win. I'll start with you, Lloyd, and I'll finish with Shrugs. How do you see this going?
Geez, not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. Geez, 22-0 up last week. I mean, we all got that horrifically wrong. Look, you'd expect South Africa to bounce back. Tighter game, lots of kicking, just going back to the muscle. Australia played very, very well last week, and they will again. But if I had to predict, I would say Boks by between 6 and 10.
They'll win. They'll take the 4-point win, lock points, no bonus look at the makeup of the team. That team is just picked to win, not to worry about the fancy the intangibles of a bonus point. Just to win, to narrow the points difference.
Jeez. Talk about crystal ball. I mean, he even knows by how many points. It's all good in the hood. That's it from us this morning. I hope you enjoyed that, and there'll be more of where these came from. But for now, from myself, Simnikiwe, Xabanisa, Khanyiso, Tshwaku, and the boss man himself, Lloyd Burnard. Good morning.